going, guys? It's Michael MGF, and today I am super excited to finally be doing my highly anticipated showcase video to celebrate the release of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And for this massive showcase video, I've got Star-Lord himself, Peter Quill, Gamora, Drax, Baby Groot, Yondu Udanta, Rocket Raccoon, Mantis, Ego the Living Planet, and Nebula, all of which were made in the span of about a month and a half, but for 2 straight weeks, I had to stop working on these figures to go to Star Wars Celebration Orlando, and so, as you might have noticed, this video is late. But thank you for being so patient. I really appreciate it. The experiences I got to have with my friends at Celebration were so incredible that I just would not trade them for any set of minifigures simply being done on time. And hopefully you guys can understand. It's been a couple weeks since the movie has come out now, so you probably don't have to worry about spoilers down in the comments if you've seen the movie, but yeah, alright, that's it. Here we go. Okay, so starting off with Star-Lord, of course, I'll go ahead and I'll just first mention that the entire helmet is fully repainted except for the front, because the print work and the designs on the front of the helmet that LEGO already has going on, I thought definitely had to stay there, but everything else is fully repainted, and that does include the hair on the top as well. And speaking of hair, we'll go ahead and remove the helmet for right now so that you can see the hairpiece that I did also paint for Peter here, which is a BVS Superman hairpiece with the sides sanded up a bit and the entire thing painted, and I also did paint the sideburns onto the head there as well. So there is that. Then the jacket originally started off as a Cape Madness jacket, or actually it was a trench coat, and then I cut the thing down and fully painted it, added all kinds of 3D elements to the front and tons of painted detail wrapping around all the way to the back, and a lot of it is mostly on the back too, and that design does continue onto the painted arms as well. Most of the things you'll see in this showcase are painted, but I'm really happy with the way the jacket turned out, and that does include the arms too. And yeah, so then the element guns that Peter has this time around, I wanted to add a lot more detail, and you can see that I pretty much added all that in the form of various silver sections on the front, bits of gold, and a lot of ventilation marks. That actually was more time consuming than you would think and took up the better part of a day, but removing those for the moment to also remove the arms to give you a better look at what's going on the torso. You can see that I do have the entire design of Peter's shirt all fully painted on there. Everything there is painted, and it was definitely pretty challenging and time consuming to get right before applying a layer of sealant to make sure it would be safe and that the jacket and its rugged fabric surface would not affect it in any way. The legs are fully painted as well, and I think the legs turned out looking really great and super accurate, and they're definitely pretty detailed, and were probably the most complex legs that I had to paint for the Guardians showcase, and you can see that design does wrap around the entirety of both legs. So yeah, aside from that, that's pretty much it for Star-Lord this time around. He is now missing his jacket, his helmet, and a couple limbs, but I think this figure turned out looking pretty great. And just to cap off the segment, I promised that it was only temporary, so here's his helmet. It's back on. Yay. Next up, we've got Gamora, and I think my favorite part of this figure has to be the faded effect that I was able to get on the back and actually the entirety of the bottom half of the hairpiece. That whole gradient look to that dark pink neon color was definitely a challenge to get right, and not something I thought would work out nearly as well as it did. And just to get it out of the way, we'll talk about this really quick. Her whole sword, this entire blade, is actually from the Minimates Guardians 2 Gamora, and before any of you comment, that's not LEGO, let me stop you there, because if that's the case, then neither are Brick Arms, Brick Forge accessories, Tiny Tactical, because all of it is made from a third party and to scale with a LEGO minifigure, the same as this Minimates blade and the same as a couple other things you'll see throughout this showcase. They are to scale and accurate to the character that I'm trying to portray with a LEGO minifigure, and therefore it is compatible with my LEGO minifigure, whether it is from a mass-produced theme that shares the same source of proportions as a minifigure or not. So yeah, anyway, the rest of the minifigure you can see is pretty much as accurate as I could get it, featuring another fully modified and cut and trimmed down Cape Madness trench coat to accommodate Gamora's hairpiece, and removing Gamora's hairpiece temporarily so you can see what I mean of how I had to pretty much trim out the entire back of it and fully paint the arms and all those details that you can see wrapping around the wrist, a painted pair of Tiny Tactical black glove tops, and then removing the arms just for a second to give you a look at the fully painted area very like curved torso underneath, and you can see that that's all painted there as well, and that also does include the legs in their entirety. And also I actually managed to find a way to get that strap over the front of her legs without actually gluing it to the legs themselves. And so what I did was I took a Cape Madness waist cape and just trimmed a strap out of it, and so even though it is glued to the side of the right leg, it is still removable from the overall belt piece, which is something I really wanted to portray with Gamora and something that I really wanted to do, because I do like to maintain the whole destructibility of LEGO minifigures if I can. But yeah, there you go, Gamora without arms. Our buddy Drax is the third figure for the video, and oh man, as soon as the Guardians became relevant again this year, all the 2014 Green Drax jokes just came flooding back. And thankfully, as you might have noticed, I corrected 2014 Ross's mistake of painting Drax green, and instead I've fully repainted the upper half of LEGO's Drax minifigure in the appropriate dark gray. And this color actually took quite a bit of mixing to get right, and then of course the tedious process of taking the official LEGO Drax minifigure and weaving my way around in and out of every single tattoo on the torso, on the arms, on the back of the torso, the head. Every tattoo I had to paint around, and it was incredibly tedious, but thankfully this time around, I guess 3 years more practice, I was able to do it even more efficiently. Anyway, the daggers, I don't remember what sword they started out as, but it took a lot of attempts to get the cut right on both of them, but you can just go on Bricklink and probably figure out what sword this originally started out as before I cut part of it off and then repainted the blades in the gunmetal color that you see, and I think they're definitely pretty great, man. And then he's got a pair of fully painted legs. Check it out. They're pretty self-explanatory, carried over from his you know, like third act outfit from the first Guardians. He didn't really change for Guardians 2, and so I did my best to portray that painted design work all throughout both legs, and I think it turned out looking pretty great. Those straps were definitely quite fun to paint, but yeah, definitely painting the tattoos on Drax was the most, you know, like painting around the tattoos was the most challenging part of making the figure after getting the whole gray skin tone mixed correctly. And yeah, painting around those tight little corners and those tight little designs, not an easy thing to do by any means, but like I said, I was able to do it more efficiently this time around, and yeah, there you go, Drax. Next up, Rocket Raccoon in his new blue costume is pretty much nothing but repainted fur, a ton of 3D elements, and some Brick Arms mods. Probably my best modded Brick Arms weapons that I've ever done. I cut off the barrel of this pistol, I cut off the stock of this one and the scope, glued on my own. I used various bits of cut up LEGO antennas to make the barrels for this pistol, to make like these little bits on the bottom of this one, all fully painted in my own colors. And you can see I've got like these orange barrels here. I mean, these pistols I'm really super satisfied with, and I'm super happy with how they turned out, and they're pretty self-explanatory, so I'm gonna have to get them out of the way, unfortunately, for the moment. But you can see what I did for the rest of the minifigure. Like I said, tons of 3D elements on the front of the torso, my favorite of which are probably these two buckles on here, all fully painted, of course, and I do even have the little bits of cybernetics that protrude from the chest of Rocket, and I think that getting those little details in there was definitely important, as I did not do that 3 years ago. Anyway, the entire headpiece is fully repainted in my own dark brown color, and that does also include the white fur as well, all mixed colors that took a while to get right. And you can see all that detail and all that paintwork does continue onto the back of the minifigure, onto his tail. You can see with all the different like bits of dark gray that run throughout it, as accurate to raccoon tails. And also you'll notice that I do have his pack on his back, and I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but regardless, this was actually made up of several cut up bits of rubber that I then put a piece of paper over and glued that on to hide the creases that were initially underneath it, and then tons of paintwork, tons of weathering on the feet, and various additional details that I painted on afterwards made for what I consider to be probably my best Rocket figure ever, even though there's only one to compare him to. Anyway, yeah, Rocket Raccoon, and yeah, that's it. And here we go with baby Groot. You probably came to the showcase just to see how exactly I pulled this off. You're also probably wondering, why did the shot just suddenly go like totally white? Why is it so bright all of a sudden? Well, this is on a rotating turntable because a minifigure stand just doesn't work for this, obviously, and apparently no other background really works too well behind the rotating stand. It's just nothing but like fingerprints and dust that just don't come off no matter what I hit the damn stand with. Anyway, how did I make this? Well, Lego's Baby Groot is pretty cool, man, but I wanted something just a little bit closer to the real thing. And so I basically grabbed a blob of Procreate and I made an hourglass. And then I sculpted the top of his head. And then I bulked up his torso. And then I used the bits of Christmas wire to make the skeleton of each arm. And then I sculpted microscopic minifigure hands, sculpted a stubby little leg. And then I was like, yeah, you know what? I cannot get the second leg right. And I was beginning to question if this would ultimately work out. I finally got the second leg sculpted on there after Celebration. And then came the challenge of assembling him. So I had to glue the arms on. I had to glue the hands on, glue the head on. I had to sculpt additional mass onto the shoulders to make sure that his body structure looked a little better and that the arms would ultimately be held in a more sturdy fashion. And then came the big challenge of getting him to stand up. Right now he's being held up by a little bit of sticky tack because he's too light to stand on a rotating surface. So he can stand on a regular solid surface but not on a rotating turntable, so there is a bit of sticky tack being used here at the moment. But yes, so I had to pretty much take even additional bits of Procreate, and then I had to just under a lamp for an hour straight just mess around with the little stubby legs I had and just try to get him to stand. And thankfully I not only got him to stand, but I also got that like sort of outward like like leg design, like the legs kind of protrude outward a little bit toward his feet, and I managed to get that, and I captured that look even more with the painted detail that I did afterwards. So once he was together, I hit him with sealants, I hit him with thick paint, I hit him with the base color of his floral colossus skin, if you will, or his oak, whatever you want to refer to it as. And then I just pretty much went from there, painting everything line for line. I added little bits of light green for the moss, and I even managed to capture the likeness of Baby Groot, which is not something I thought I'd be able to do. And here is Rocket, just to give you an idea of scale, just how small Baby Groot really is. It is something else that I managed to pull this off, and I could not be more proud of the end result. And he was absolutely hilarious in Volume 2 and had some incredibly fantastic sequences. So I didn't think I'd be able to pull it off, guys, but there he is, Baby Groot. And now I'm going to stall so that you can see him from the front before I end the segment. There he is, Baby Groot. Our fifth figure for the video is also my favorite figure out of everyone in the showcase. My god, did he have some great scenes in the movie. Yondu Udanta. And going into the making of this figure, I was like, okay, I really like a lot of the things that I did 3 years ago with my original Yondu, but I wanted to only take inspiration and just do it better. And so I started out by keeping Lego's Yondu head. Despite what I said in that review, I went ahead and added a little bit to the face, and that came in the form of a little bit of paint above each eye. And so I really became fond of this face for Yondu in the end. And so I filed off the entire stud, sanded the whole thing off, and then I went ahead and took the fantastic fin piece that Lego made for Yondu, filled it in with Procreate. That was a tough process. Attached the whole thing to the head, and then painted all the detail that you see on it, and I could not be happier with the end result. So the jacket is a fully modified Cape Madness jacket that I went ahead and trimmed up in various areas and painted on all kinds of various details and added on a lot of 3D elements. Yondu has even more 3D elements than Rocket did. You can see all of that in the form of these darts, which are actually tiny tactical glow sticks that I painted in my own colors, and then all these different bits here, the buckles and straps and all these buttons down here are painted, but then you have all these other 3D elements here. These are all applied individually and glued on separately, and that does also include the Ravager symbol. That patch is also a 3D element, and so are these little bits on the arms, and this entire gauntlet is actually made up of like 5 different layers of all kinds of shipping labels to make this gauntlet as three-dimensional and as in-depth looking as it is. I'm super happy with that. The buckle on the top, all the triangles making up the pattern on the back of the trench coat here was something I left out on the original Yondu that I made sure to do this time around, and I think the jacket has got to be probably the best part of the minifigure if you ask me. So yeah, we'll go ahead and remove it though, remove his arms temporarily temporarily to give you a look at what's going on beneath the jacket. And you can see underneath this entire trench coat, I've got a really detailed painted torso design that does take inspiration from the original, but has much thinner lines and is just overall better. And you'll also notice that I do have the arrow holster glued into the belt piece, and the legs are also fully painted. Not wraparound design work because the coat goes over it, but definitely much more complex this time around and a bit more accurate while still taking inspiration from the original. And you can see the arrow is actually the Minimates Yondu arrow, and again, don't give me crap for it because I promise you it is so much better. This arrow is so much better than anything I was trying to do with this. So yeah, then I did, like I said, make this arrow holster for it so it can just go ahead and slide into it. And by the way, you can see all that on the arrow, all that painted detail before I go ahead and slide it back into the slot there. And it holds the arrow in place, and then the trench coat does go over it, as you've already seen. So yeah, that pretty much covers most of the work that went into the making of Yondu. Definitely, like I said, the best figure in this video. The last figure that I finished for the video, Nebula. Man, her backstory is dark when she talks about it in this movie. Good God. But we finally know why she's so pissed off, and you can see that pissed off expression on LEGO's official printed design on this head. And pretty much what I did was I took LEGO's latest Nebula head from the most recent wave of sets for Guardians 2, and I just pretty much took the design and with paint wrapped it around the entire head. Instead of just the front and the back, I continued it along this side. I continued this line along the right side of the head, and then also I continued the design up the top of the head and over the stud. So that was definitely pretty tedious, but overall made for a much more complete looking Nebula head, and it turned out pretty great. Fun fact, the front of her face, I actually used the same color paint that I used for Psylocke from X-Men. Anybody remember that showcase? Nope. Yeah, understandable. I also painted her collar on there. I also used an area-like curved torso before painting on the entire design of her Ravager costume on the front and also on the back, which is much more simple in comparison to the front. But the arms are definitely where most of the detail is at. 3D elements galore on this arm with the Ravager symbol and more detailed lines, which I'm really proud of. And then also the best part of the minifigure, if you ask me, the metallic cybernetic arm, which has pretty much just lines, a lot of lines based off the Funko figure, just lines, lots of lines, and it does wrap around the whole arm, and it turned out pretty great, and I think it captures the look of her robotic arm pretty well, man. So there is that. And then also, oh boy, did you even notice? No, you didn't. The second half of her pistol is actually Minimates, and you can't even tell. That's exactly the point I was trying to make earlier. But the first half of it is actually a brick forge Star Trek phaser, believe it or not, and then I added this part to the top and painted the entire thing, and it was actually the last bit of work that I did for the Guardians 2 showcase. Anyway, fully painted legs, tons of detail, you get the idea. 3D belt piece right here on the very front of the actual belt piece, and then I also used some 3D bits of shipping labels for the bottom halves of her legs too, and all of this painted in complex all these complex sets of lines. And I pretty much just wanted to make these straps here 3D because I'm not gonna lie, I just didn't want to paint a strap wrapping around all four sides of her legs. So yeah, honesty. Anyway, yeah, there's Nebula. Super happy with the way she turned out. Lots of detail, man. Our second to last figure, Mantis. This is pretty much a repainted hairpiece, painted face, painted area-like curved torso, painted and modified Cape Madness waist cape, and then a pair of painted legs and painted arms and lots of metallic dark green. You got some netting going on here. These little bits on her shoulders are 3D, pair of tiny tactical glove tops. I also added these two little light blue metallic bits to the top of each antenna, but LEGO just made a fantastic new rubber piece for Mantis in the set, and so I just repainted it, like I said, repainted the entire hairpiece, and you know, with various like turquoise highlights running through her hair, and I did that after seeing the movie actually, so yeah, definitely not too apparent in reference. Anyway, the face, you might be thinking, why aren't the eyes bigger? Well, Mantis's eyes are really regular size human eyes. It's her pupils that are much bigger, so that's exactly what I did. I made her eyes regular size. Do not mean for that to rhyme, but I made sure to make the pupil much smaller than your average minifigure, and so thus capturing the whole like bug-eyed look of Mantis. So yeah, and like I said, modified Cape Madness waist cape, all fully trimmed down and cut and repainted with various designs on it, and that design that you see on her on the sides of her legs there, that does continue all the way up both sides of either leg. And you'll also notice that there really isn't a lot going on the front of her legs because I painted like 2 sets of lines, and I looked back at my reference and I was like, oh, well, that was it. So yeah, other than that, that's pretty much it for Mantis. Not too much to talk about, but I think she definitely ended up being a really solid figure nonetheless. Oh no, the last figure of the showcase. I get to stop recording soon. I'd kind of like what I did with the whole breakdown of Mantis, so we'll do the same thing for Ego the Living Planet here. Fully repainted hairpiece, a sculpted and painted beard, a clone trooper face used for the likeness to Kurt Russell, a sculpted scarf weathering running throughout the entirety of the torso and all of its 3D elements that continue onto the arms, a fully painted pair of legs, and a similar strap to Gamora. So I also left out the painted Cape Madness cape. That is also a thing, but yeah, so Ego Living Planet's face, I decided I don't know why I said his full name, but I used a clone trooper face, which I actually got the idea from when I used that face for a makeshift version of Ego for one of the Guardians 2 set reviews, skits, so I carried that over onto the custom minifigure because I liked how it turned out. The sculpted beard and the hairpiece do have a light gray weathering effect running throughout each, and the beard was actually harder to sculpt than Logan's for whatever reason. It was a bit of a pain in the ass, but I do have a lot of the ancient textures and designs running throughout the outfit as consistent to his outfit in the movie, such as the dark gray weathering to kind of capture that ancient texture that he has running throughout the material of his costume, and also the ancient design work on the shoulder pads, on the wrist pads, and also on these bits on the front of the torso here, and that similar design work does kind of continue onto the belt itself, and you can see I've got even more designs going on. You know, it's all there. It's accurate. It's pretty much what I'm trying to convey. And the scarf, that whole little buckle that you see hanging off of it, that's actually a staple, man. And what I mentioned earlier with Gamora's strap, it's pretty much the same design, just inverted. So I've got it that, it connects. You can go onto the legs pegs. Did not mean for that to rhyme. Lots of rhymes this showcase, but I did glue it onto the right leg as opposed to Gamora's left. And 3D elements are actually beneath the strap before I glued it on. And so lots of 3D elements with Ego, lots of detail, lots of ancient designs, and I'm pretty happy with the way he turned out, and his role was definitely pretty unexpected in the movie. But aside from that, guys, that is pretty much it for the entirety of the Guardians 2 showcase video. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed all these minifigures thus far, but we're going to go ahead and wrap up this video. I had a pretty cool dad.
But he took Ego's children to him to be killed, and his crew would eat people.
Really, lady? You mentioned all that at my damn funeral? Satan! Alright guys, there you go. That's it for the Guardians 2 showcase. Thank you so much for sticking around for the whole thing because, you gotta rake in all that YouTube watch time. But seriously, if you enjoyed the showcase or maybe found yourself inspired to make your own minifigures from the movie, then be sure to let me know by dropping this video a like below and or your opinion on any of the figures down in the comments. Anything you like or dislike about them, your opinion, and you guys are seriously the reason that I continue to do this each and every year. So I really mean it when I say that it goes a long way. But if you want to keep up with future projects such as Wonder Woman, a couple figures that I'm going to be doing for The Flash, Spider-Man Homecoming, and so much more that I'm doing throughout the year, then definitely check out the Twitter, the Bookface, and the Instagram if you care. Links to all 3 of those are always down in the description below because it is a hell of a lot easier to take a photo, make a PNG, and throw together a preview of upcoming figures before finishing them, rather than actually doing so and making a major, massive video such as this. So, aside from that, Guardians 2 was pretty amazing, especially the second time around. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it is an incredible film, and I cannot wait to see it again. I've already seen it twice. I'm probably sure there are plenty of you out there who have seen it many more times than me, but yeah guys, that is it for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. It's been awesome. There will be no more figures for the movie after this. To those of you guys wondering about Aisha and Sylvester Stallone and probably a few other characters that I'm definitely not making. But sorry to disappoint there. Kind of lame to end on that note, but I will see you guys later. All right. Bye-bye. That is it for the Guardians 2 showcase. Star-Lord, hopefully you enjoyed it and I'm working out really well. I think the hairpiece is my favorite fart. It's my favorite fart of the figure. Great. I'm not afraid of you.
Sleep!
Yondu Udanta, that's Gamora. You can see like these little like silhouette, like these fuck. To give you an idea of the scale, here he is. That was a voice crack. What happened to you? I don't want to talk about it.
I am Groot.
The release of Guardians of... No. About them. Your opinion is seriously all that